Next up to the SIC keynote stage, we have the Director of Product Management at Adobe. He's been at Adobe for 21 years, spending 15 years at Photoshop and 10 years as the product manager at Photoshop. The last 6 years he's spent on mobile and partnerships, and he was actually inducted into the Hall of Fame of Photoshop in 2011. Please welcome Bryan O'Neill Hughes.
Hello, my name is Bryan O'Neill Hughes. I'm a Director of Product Management at Adobe, and I'm thrilled to be with you today. I know this is a different environment than we'd normally be in. I wish that I could talk to you guys before and after the conference as I normally would, but this is a year of change and adapting, so it goes. That's really what I want to talk to you about today, is this intersection of change and opportunity, which is sort of the good byproduct of change, education and the things that we learn from it, and technology, which, without technology, none of this would be possible. We wouldn't be able to have this conversation. So I thought with that, we'd start briefly with my background, and really for two reasons. One, I want you to know who I am. But there's also been a tremendous amount of change in my own career, and I think that it's very relevant to what I want to talk to you about. So I've been at Adobe for over 20 years, about 21 years now, and it's been a wild ride. I was a professional photographer before coming to Adobe, and I thought I had my dream job because I loved cameras and I loved cars, and I thought, oh gosh, if I were a motorsports photographer, that would just be the best thing in the world. Well, it was not. I was taking the same picture day after day, and I was jealous of the drivers. I did not enjoy it, but I considered that really fortunate to have that realization up front and to realize I don't want to do that. And so then it was a matter of, what next? And I think we all wonder about that when we're young. Again, I was really fortunate that a friend of mine took me to the Siebel Digital Imaging Show in 1996 to see what the future of photography was. And that's exactly what I found. In fact, I didn't get any further than the Adobe booth. I watched a Photoshop 4.0 demo again and again and again and again. I stayed there all day long, watched the same demo, and I had one of those moments where I realized what I wanted to do with my life. Without knowing that much about Adobe or even Photoshop, that was where I wanted to be. It was abundantly clear to me that it was calling me. Now, this was completely at odds with my reality because, again, I didn't know much about Adobe. I didn't know anything about Photoshop. I didn't own Photoshop. In fact, I didn't even own a computer. I hadn't finished college, and I lived in Carmel, California, where I was born and raised, rather than Silicon Valley. So I just wasn't anywhere near the problem I needed to solve. And I'm a lousy slow runner, but I'll borrow from running. I think that significant change is a lot like running in that you need to lace up first. You need to decide that you want to do it. So I made the decision that I'm going to do this. No matter how scary it is, I'm going to do it. And the next part is, with running, you need to just put one foot in front of the other and fall forward without trying to fall down. So, momentum, progress. So I moved up to the Valley. I enrolled in USF in a computer science program. I found a job, wasn't my dream job, but it was a job that immersed me in Photoshop and computers as a retoucher. And so I learned a lot. It's very uncomfortable, but I learned a lot. And through a combination of luck and timing and nagging and perseverance, I finally managed to get a job at Adobe, testing an application called Photo Deluxe. Wasn't the dream, but it was really, really close to the dream. It was, it was in the same ballpark. And so I started off doing that. I loved the company. I knew that right away. I loved the team. I liked the product a lot. I liked the work. It was great. And then the project got canceled. And, I felt like, this is a very dated reference, but I felt like Ethan Hawke in Gattaca, where he's sweeping the floor watching the rockets take off. And he's thinking, I've never been further from my dreams than when I'm underneath them. Here I am at Adobe. I'm so close, and that's going to be it. And I just, again, kind of refused to accept that that was okay. Scrambled over to the Photoshop team. They didn't know who I was, but I said, you know what? I've been using the application for years. I come from photography. Maybe there's a home for a guy like me. I think it was a combination, again, luck, passion, perseverance, and a little bit of a unique skill set that they found a home for me there testing Photoshop. And that was amazing. The dot-com bubble burst. It was a really scary time to be in technology. I just wanted to keep my head down and do a good job, but it was terrifying. People were going back to school because they'd lost their jobs, and I was just trying to put one foot in front of the other. An interesting thing happened there shortly after that, which is that the mass proliferation of digital cameras really kind of exploded, right? Digital SLRs under $1,000. And I realized, I have some knowledge that the team doesn't have, both as a user and as a photographer. And I started to question whether the job that I had settled for was really the right one for me. If I really should be a quality engineer. It didn't feel perfectly right, but I loved the team so much that I had stuck with it. And I decided, I want to be a product manager. I want to shape the product, and I want to take that out to the people who use it, into the press. And again, impossible dream. Well, where's your MBA? Where's your product management experience? You'd have to start on a different team and then come to this one. Sort of the same thing. I just refused to accept that very stubbornly. And again, it was a combination of having a unique skill set, having some experience on the team, having networked some, and being fortunate that a friend and a colleague and a mentor, Pam Clark, stepped out on maternity leave. And she said, there's no job for you when I come back, but wear the product management hat, have fun with it. You'd be great. And I knew a couple days into it that there was no going back. And that was a really uncomfortable thing to learn. Was I loved product management overnight so much, and it was such a good fit that there was no way I could go back to being a quality engineer. It just wasn't. I knew I'd have to leave the team or leave the company. But I also knew that if I devoted myself to 6 months to proving to the team that they couldn't do it without me, that I was invaluable, maybe there was some glimmer of a chance. And that's exactly what happened. Maria Yap created a role for me as product manager. I became the first product manager to go from QE to product management, certainly on that team. And it was an absolute dream come true. And that's what I did for a decade. And it was absolutely amazing dream job. There were other big changes in there. Our business went from perpetual boxed software to subscription software. There was all sorts of tension around that. There were all sorts of feelings, both internally and externally, about what that meant. A lot of us believed that could be a better world. It could be a better world for our customers because we could deploy software faster and easier. And we could do all sorts of really interesting things with services. And that's obviously ended up being true. There was another thing that happened where we had been aware of touch devices, the phone and the iPad, and they'd been very interesting to all of us. They were essentially computers in our pockets. But when the iPad Pro came out, my whole world sort of changed overnight. And I thought, that's a really approachable, usable, friendly device, and it's powerful enough to do a lot of the things we've been doing on the desktop. And so that really became my passion. And for the course of the last 5 years, I've been overseeing a number of mobile applications, systems, services that connect all of these surfaces. And each one of those steps was really uncomfortable. It was really difficult. It was really scary. There were times when I didn't want to be doing it. There were times when I didn't think I could do it. And there were hundreds of times when people told me I couldn't do it. So, hopefully you understand a little bit more about who I am and that I have been in an uncomfortable position many, many times. I've had to change my spots many times. And as a business, as a company, Adobe's had to change its spots many, many times. I think that's a huge part of the reason that Photoshop is still relevant, is that it went from a web application to a photography application to graphic design, 3D. It's changed. And that's kind of what we're all dealing with right now is change, change in our roles. Whoever you are, I promise you're changing. You have a different role than you did. Maybe you lost your job. I know a lot of people have lost their jobs. Maybe your job has changed. I know my job has changed recently. Maybe your job has changed because of someone else's job loss, right? Maybe you are filling in for someone that used to be on the team. If you're a parent, then you're a teacher and you're the cafeteria and you're recess. You're wearing more hats than ever. And I'm sure your kids are thoroughly confused. I know mine are. If you're a student, you're closer to screens than ever at a time when we've been trying to get kids away from screens. I'm sure that's incredibly confusing. You use them for fun, now you use them for school. I think kids probably have it, maybe the worst right now in terms of weathering this. They're very adaptable, but it's incredibly disruptive. As far as time goes, I thought I would find some time. I wasn't going to be on the road for 3 hours going from Santa Cruz to San Francisco. Ends up that's not the case. Those 5-minute coffee breaks, those 10-minute lunches, I really did eat lunch in 10 minutes. Those turned into 30-minute meetings and hour meetings. And I find that my people on my team, as a director of product management, my people are my products. They need me more than ever. And the partners that I work with at other companies need me more than ever. And so my days are longer than they have ever been. And so we've come up with all sorts of interesting and creative solutions. I've encouraged everyone that owns a meeting to shorten the meeting, but keep the meeting the same length that it was, to protect it. I've encouraged folks to take time off at the same time so it doesn't feel punitive when you come back. Just trying to come up with unique solutions. Adobe recently instituted every third Friday off so that everyone can step away together and not feel this avalanche of mail when they come back. And I think that's probably counterintuitive that when we all have more work to do and longer days, that we would take time off. But recharging your batteries, however you do that these days, is more important than ever. Really, really, really important. And I think it pays dividends. People come back and they really are recharged. As far as teamwork goes, the nature of how we work and how we collaborate has changed tremendously. I'm sure it has for you as well. We're living in Zoom calls, we're staring at lit screens, we're sitting in one place, and yet we still need to collaborate. We still need to work together. There are a ton of different tools out there. Some of these are very familiar to you. We're all living in Slack all day, every day. Super helpful. Zoom, I know my kids are in Zoom. Adobe uses a tool called Blue Jeans. You get used to working with different video conferencing solutions because there's a lot of them out there and you need to be flexible. Just video conferencing is an act of discomfort. I can often be resistant to change, which is funny because I elected to have a position that's all about change. Technology changes every day. We had an offsite for 2 days, and we decided to use this tool called Miro that was digital whiteboarding and moving notes and stuff around collaboratively. I was resistant to it. It was another tool to learn. It just felt like another new thing in a year full of new things. And yet, and this is kind of my arc, once I learned it, I became an evangelist for it. Hey, you guys got to check this out. Same thing with Adobe Scan. I'm very close to our creative products. I've never been that close to our Acrobat products. I certainly respect them and their legacy. But I needed to take a bunch of paperwork and scan it and share it. And I didn't want to see those people in person. I wanted to do it in a very safe and efficient manner. And I thought, well, I've heard about Adobe Scan. I'll try that. I had a wonderful experience with it. Here I am evangelizing Adobe Scan to you. It solved a bunch of problems. So new solutions for new problems, and technology is just everywhere in that. And it's not all work. So what you see here is this thread that my colleague Alexandru, teammate of mine, started called View from My Office. And the idea with View from My Office is let's see what each other are seeing. Let's see your office environment. And so on the left, we've got these, very aspirational settings. There's one in Germany. I'm not sure where the one in the lower left-hand corner is. You've got a funny one up top. I think we've all come up with some hack solution. Outdoors, you're never clear on Are people outdoors because they've got an amazing yard and they want to show it off a little, or have they been chased out of the house? I know that anytime I end up outdoors, it's the latter. On the right-hand side, you see incredibly small spaces, whether you see them like that one, or just because we're sharing them with our kids and they're just shrinking all of the time. So stuff like this helps us see what's going on with each other. It makes it fun, makes it interesting. It's not all work. I think what Apple has done has been really interesting. We're used to going into Apple stores. We're used to experiencing their products. I know that an application in my portfolio, Adobe Fresco, which is this focused drawing and painting application, it's pre-installed on all the iPads and all the Apple stores, and you can go in and learn all about it. But of course, now you can't, maybe you can go into the store, but you certainly can't do it today at Apple Session and learn about it. And yet, Apple was super creative with that. They said to their creative pros, wherever you are in the world, create your content and we'll share it with everyone. And so here you have Rosie in London showing how to use GarageBand by recording sounds and mixing them from her kitchen. Super, super cool. Love stuff like this. And when it comes to the fidelity of creative content, I think we're all a lot more tolerant. We've accepted that newscasters are going to be broadcasting from their homes. And so a couple of quotes here, one from Arjun at TikTok. At this point of time, what we increasingly see at TikTok is that well-polished creative, very shiny-looking marketing pushes are actually resonating less versus what we see increasingly being successful is some very authentic and raw creative. All right, and then another quote from Diageo. We've been producing some of the best creative ever in the past 5 years by using stock images. So that goes to show it's not about having a big budget. Better creative is all about having the right people and the right talent. We know that great work is not defined by the size of your budget. Total validation for that idea, and how would we test it other than now? How would we ever know or tolerate that content? Really cool collaboration between Adobe and BuzzFeed. Essentially what we did here is we brought together a bunch of young creatives in quarantine and had them use our tools, and they did a takeover of the BuzzFeed page and site. They completely took it over, and it was really cool to see what happened. I actually have a video that I'll share in here as well. And in terms of students and education, I talked before about kids and the impact that this has had on kids. But no matter who you are, you're learning differently. If you're an adult, you might be learning more. So some examples of how that's changed. I've been a lynda.com author for nearly a decade now. I love recording content for lynda.com. That's now part of LinkedIn. It's called LinkedIn Learning. The thing that's changed there, one, there's a lot of people consuming my content. There's a lot of notes I get about how much people appreciate it, but even how we record it. So in the same way that I recorded the content for this, a Pelican case or a box arrives with a camera and some lights and a tripod. I'm not just the author, I'm the producer, I'm the editor, I'm the sound guy, I'm the camera guy, I'm the lighting guy. We're all wearing different hats all the time and learning new skills all the time. There's a company called Skillshare that does online learning. And as an example, we've partnered with them closely with Adobe Fresco. And there's like 36 courses already in just a year on Skillshare. People are feeding these repositories of learning content and creating new stuff constantly. And they're consuming a ton of it too. General Assembly, which was always this wonderful physical spot, all over the world that you could go to, these warehouses, very cool spot. You'd go in and you'd take these courses and classes, have very successfully pivoted to online learning. And they've got all sorts of courses online, including a bunch with Adobe tools. Great partner, great pivot. I'm sure it's the sort of thing that they weren't ready to do yet, but they've done a brilliant job given the opportunity. Okay, so I want to talk about events for just a minute. In 2017 and in several years around there, I would regularly host these Make It in Mobile events. We'd bring together some amazing artists and influencers. We'd give them iPads, we'd have them play around with our software, and then we'd see the work that they created. Well, this year, that was no longer an option. Here you see me in this picture with this woman, Pollyanna, and Pollyanna really deserves a lot of credit because she took the whole concept of this physical event and said, you know what, we can we can do as well. In fact, we can do better virtually. And so this year, to coincide with the forthcoming release of Illustrator on the iPad, which is something we did a sneak peek of last year, she said, you know what, we're going to do, make it in Proteus. That's the code name, make it in Illustrator. And we're going to do it virtually. So they did it online. They did it with Zoom. They had this whole collaborative environment. And I was a part of it. I spoke at it. And I can tell you, having done many of these physically, the quality that came out of this was better than the physical event. It really was. The collaboration, the exchange of ideas, the conversations, in every single way, it was better. This isn't to say that we should all be apart from each other. It is to say that if you really work at it and rethink it, some things can improve. And I think that's how we're going to look back on all of this, is that things can improve, they can get better, there are opportunities. So people learned a lot and they created some beautiful work, and you can see some great quotes here from the folks who attended it. They all said the same thing. They got a lot out of it, and some of these guys had done the other workshops. In fact, in the case of Kervin and Rob, they'd both done the physical workshops before. Which brings me to, a gift for you guys. I want to step through this quickly. I want to try to cover a lot of ground, but I also want to try to give back to you. I cannot think of a better gift than Adobe Max. Adobe Max is our largest creative conference. It's the largest creative conference in the world. There's a day one keynote where we present all of the updates to our tools. And if you don't use our tools or you don't care about our tools, like my wife, the day two keynote is all about inspiration. Celebrities, luminaries, incredible, incredible people with incredible stories. Some of the best speakers, some of the best talks I've ever heard are in those day two keynotes. And then there's, dozens, hundreds of sessions learning about all sorts of different things. And of course, networking. Well, traditionally you'd get on a plane, you'd stay in a hotel, you'd pay a bunch of money to go to Max. Max is its biggest, it's its most global, it's its most accessible, and as someone who's involved in the keynote and has recorded session content, I promise you it is going to be its best Max this year, and it's free. Everyone can attend Adobe Max this year. And what that means for you guys is that, you're not 15,000 people back. I think there were 15,000 people last year. You've got a front row seat, and you can consume it at your leisure. You can watch what you want when you want. And I just think that's going to be a remarkable way to enjoy Max, and I think it's at a time when we all need it. So whether you're looking at it from a business standpoint or social media, marketing, creativity, whatever it might be, I promise you there's something there for you, even if it's just inspiration. I think you'll really, really, really enjoy it. So I know I've covered a lot. I know we've raced along. That's not all that I want to give back. A couple of parting thoughts. Just as I was getting used to all of this, we had fires where I live, and we were evacuated. And I believed when I left the house that I was saying goodbye to it for the last time. Turned around and I took a picture of it. I put what I thought I was supposed to put in my car, and I tucked my kids in, I strapped them in, and we left. And we each had our most valuable things, which is an incredibly difficult exercise. It's incredibly uncomfortable and scary. And you go through sort of every possible emotion. Maybe some of you have been through this. It's really hard. And we spent the next 2 weeks refreshing maps, watching to see if our house burnt down. And our whole family, my parents and my wife's parents, they were also displaced and evacuated. And I'm back in my home. My home is still standing. The flames came very close to our house. It was incredibly cathartic. In the end, you get to a point where you realize they are things that can be replaced as long as we're okay and our family's okay. We could start over. It's incredibly uncomfortable, but it was an interesting process to go through. And as soon as I got back, I had the realization that I've had throughout the last several months, which is no matter how difficult my experience might be, within a day, I meet someone or I learn about someone whose experience is far worse. So there were over 1,000 people who lost their homes. Some of them were our friends. And I know there are people who've lost their jobs. I know there's people who've lost their lives. It's been incredibly difficult. So, one of my parting thoughts to you is that change is a constant. It's not limited to just this time. It's something we're all going to live with. Hopefully there's not this much change packed into 1 year. I'd be fine if it stretched out for a decade or two. But it's what you do with it. It's your attitude about it. It's your approach to it. It's up to you guys what you do with it. And it can and should be a little bit exciting, a little bit inspirational. And I hope that this has been that, at least in part. I meant every word. It's an honor to reach you guys. And, just in closing, if you want to join Max, that would be awesome. I think you'd really enjoy it. It's max.adobe.com. Doesn't cost anything. Watch whatever you like. If you want to get in contact with me, I can't promise a lifelong correspondence, but if you have any questions about Adobe or about what we've talked about, you can email me at bhughes@adobe.com. And if you want to find me on LinkedIn, if you want to talk about, career stuff, I do a lot of that. Happy to coach or mentor or offer some advice or point you in the right direction. And last, if you're really into old trucks or dogs or cars or kids and a little bit of creative software, you're probably going to love my Instagram channel. There's no such thing as that one person who loves all of it, but maybe just for the dogs. Thank you guys very much. I know we covered a lot. I hope you're enjoying the conference. I wish that I could be there with you, but thank you.